In an opulent jewelry store, the light glistened off the displays, highlighting intricate designs that sparkled like stars in a night sky. Customers wandered through the aisles, some marveling at the craftsmanship, while others debated over which piece would be their next investment. Among the patrons, a woman of striking presence was trying on a set of diamond earrings, her sophisticated demeanor accentuated by the designer dress draping gracefully around her. With every calculated turn, she radiated an air of superiority, oblivious to the world outside her bubble of wealth. As she scoffed at the prices, she overheard whispers from the customers around her, their conversations tinged with both admiration and judgment. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a man who had just entered the store. He was dressed simply, a stark contrast to the luxurious surroundings. His gaze moved from display to display, filled with wonder and quiet reverence for the beauty around him. He seemed out of place yet entirely comfortable, as if his aura communicated his self-worth without the need for extravagant attire. Engrossed in the brilliance of a delicate sapphire necklace, the man stepped a little too close to the woman as she carelessly twirled to show her friend her newly adorned ears. In an unfortunate turn of events, her most prized jewel, an exquisite diamond bracelet, slipped from her wrist. Time seemed to slow as the bracelet hit the polished floor, the sound of precious metal clanging echoing throughout the store like the tolling of a bell heralding disaster. Fury ignited within her. It was as if the world had conspired to humiliate her. As she turned, her eyes locked onto the man who had inadvertently caused her misfortune. "Look what you've done," she spat, her voice edged with disdain. Instead of acknowledging the accident, she chose to unleash a torrent of vitriol. "You think you can just wander in here, looking like that, and not expect to disrupt a proper environment?" Her disdain dripped from every word, as if she believed his mere presence held the ability to tarnish the sophistication she so desperately clung to. The man's expression shifted from surprise to hurt, his eyes narrowing slightly as her words cut through the air like a knife. He stood tall, unwilling to be belittled by someone so consumed by their own privilege. "I didn't mean to bump into you," he stated calmly, trying to diffuse the tension. "I was just admiring the jewelry." Yet, she continued her tirade, her arrogance fueling an escalating confrontation. "You have no business being here," she hissed, eyes flashing. "This store is for people who appreciate beauty, not someone like you." Her words were laced with a bitterness that spoke of a lifetime of entitlement, a belief that her worth, and everyone else's, could be quantified by monetary value and race. Around them, the atmosphere shifted. Customers stood frozen, shock plastered across their faces. Some instinctively raised their phones, catching the scene unfolding before them, while others exchanged murmurs filled with disbelief and discomfort. Many looked away, unwilling to confront the unpleasantness that swirled just out of their grasp. A sense of collective hesitance filled the air as the incident unfolded, a moment laden with unvoiced thoughts and silent judgments. As the tension escalated, the store manager, a middle-aged man with a neatly trimmed beard and a delicate disposition, hurriedly approached the commotion, hoping to mediate the brewing storm. "Ladies, let's keep this civil," he urged, his voice steady yet strained. "I'm sure we can resolve this without incident." However, his words barely broke through the wall of hostility as the woman remained fixated on her target. Despite the circumstances, the man's calm demeanor served as a contrast to her erupting rage. "You don't know anything about me," he replied, his voice steady yet tinged with the weight of her words. "You've made an assumption based on my appearance, just like so many others do, and that's not fair." As he spoke, the murmurs in the crowd began to shift. Some customers nodded in agreement, while others whispered encouragement, emboldened by his stance. The woman glanced around, realizing that her outburst had caught the attention of more people than she had anticipated. Her face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment as she wrestled with the growing backlash against her. In a moment of desperation, she attempted to regain control. "I am a valued customer here," she stated, her tone shifting to one of entitlement. "I deserve respect, and you should know your place." The words fell flat, unable to mask the growing conviction among the patrons that something needs to change. The manager, sensing the pivot in sentiment, stepped in once more, determined to turn the dialogue toward a more productive outcome. "This isn't a place for discrimination. Perhaps we should all take a moment to reflect on how we treat one another." His plea landed amid the mounting discomfort, prompting people to reconsider their silence. As the atmosphere shifted, the man took a step forward. "Let's talk about respect," he suggested gently, locking eyes with the woman. "It goes both ways. Every person here has something to bring to this world, regardless of their appearance or background. It's about understanding and kindness. The setup around them transformed from one of division to a space ripe for discussion. As more customers began to vocalize their support, sharing their own experiences with prejudice and bias, the gift of empathy washed over the room. The woman found herself suddenly in a spotlight, her previous confidence crumbling under the weight of collective voices. Feeling cornered, a new realization struck her. The consequences of her actions now reverberated through the very fabric of the store she had once seen as her sanctuary. The other customers no longer viewed her with admiration, but with a mix of disappointment and disapproval. Suddenly, the cocoon of entitlement she had wrapped herself in felt suffocating, and the faces around her bore witness to her unraveling. Faced with the reality of the situation, the woman took a deep breath, the sudden weight of the moment forcing her to re-evaluate her stance. In that introspective silence, something within her began to shift. Perhaps she could learn, perhaps she could change. The thoughts raced through her mind, a budding awareness that this encounter could serve as a turning point, not just for herself, but for every patron in the store. Resolved to confront her prejudices, she took a step back and spoke, her voice softer, tinged with depth and sincerity. "I apologize. I spoke without thinking. What I said was wrong." The amalgamation of honesty and vulnerability seeped into the atmosphere, creating a poignant silence that drew the attention of everyone present. The man watched her, a flicker of cautious hope igniting in his heart. As the murmurs shifted again, a sense of camaraderie began to blossom in the space, with customers sharing stories of their own experiences with discrimination. The dialogue unfurled, bridging the gaps between individuals from vastly different backgrounds. They began to find common ground, discovering threads of humanity woven through their diverse lives. In that pivotal moment, as the woman opened her heart to the possibility of change, she started to see beyond the gilded world she had always known. The conversations around her weren't just about jewelry or appearances. They were about lives intertwined, histories shared, and a common desire for acceptance. In embracing this, she would embark upon a journey not merely for herself, but as a part of a communal quest for understanding and compassion. The atmosphere in the store grew lighter, infused with hope, the spirit of unity and resolve permeating the air. It was clear that this moment would not just be a passing incident, but a catalyst for transformation, a powerful reminder of the beauty that lies in empathy and the courage it takes to change deep-seated beliefs. Taking the first steps toward understanding, the woman stood on the precipice of a new beginning, ready to embrace the journey that awaited. The store, once merely a place to showcase wealth, blossomed into a haven of shared experiences, learning and growth, leaving an indelible mark on every soul present. Amid the rising tension in the jewelry store, the atmosphere felt electric, charged with emotions that hung precipitously in the air. The woman, flush with indignation, hurled insults at the man who had tried to assert his dignity, a dignity she was so adamant about undermining. As patrons stood in divided silence, drawn to the spectacle unfolding before them, the door swung open, and a new presence entered the fray. She was tall and commanding, with streaks of fierce determination etched across her face. The moment she stepped inside, her sisterly instincts kicked in. It was as if an unyielding force had entered the space. Her eyes landed on the scene, locking onto her brother, who was visibly pained. She could see the hurt reflected in his demeanor, the weight of humiliation heavy on his shoulders, and it ignited an inferno inside her. "Stop right there," she exclaimed, her voice piercing through the cacophony of murmurs. All eyes now snapped toward her, shifting from the woman of privilege who had instigated the confrontation to this new figure who possessed an air of authority. She pointed an accusatory finger at the woman, her voice unwavering as she demanded, "What gives you the right to speak to him like that? Your words are nothing but venom, woven with outdated prejudice." The air thickened with the intensity of her tone, the unexpected confrontation shifting the dynamic entirely. The initial shock on the woman's face morphed into defensiveness, and the verbal sparring intensified. "And you are," she retorted, her demeanor defiantly elitist. "Another entitled individual throwing stones from the sidelines? You should know your place too." The sister stepped closer, brimming with contempt for the woman's attitude, and with every word, her conviction grew stronger. "I'm his sister. I know what kind of man he is. He is a respected member of this community, dedicated to upliftment and inclusion, a champion for those who usually don't have a voice. He works tirelessly to support others, and you dare to reduce him to nothing based on the color of his skin." Her voice rose with passion, each syllable an arrow aimed directly at the heart of the woman's ignorance. It was as if the revelation struck the crowd like lightning. Whispers cascaded around the store, conversations igniting in unexpected corners. The man's character was laid bare, his virtues shining like the jewels displayed in the cases around them. The woman, once so confident, now looked as if she had been physically struck. The word she had carelessly wielded shattered upon the revelation of his true identity, and the mounting disappointment in the room clawed at her composure. A ripple of support surged among the onlookers as they began to vocalize their solidarity with the brother and sister duo. "He's right," one voice called, a young man stepping forward with conviction. "We should be celebrating our differences, not belittling people for them." Others joined in, affirming the need for respect and unity amidst diversity. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief as she faced the unexpected backlash. In a desperate attempt to regain her footing, the woman facing the sister insisted defensively, "Just because he may have accolades doesn't mean he's above anyone else. It doesn't erase what I saw." Yet her voice faltered, lacking the weight it needed to maintain any semblance of authority. The pull of the crowd was undeniable as patrons began to visibly shift their allegiance, some adding their voices to support the sister's argument. Murmurs of agreement spread, creating waves of collective recognition that resonated throughout the space. The store manager stood awkwardly to the side, his anxiety palpable as he witnessed the conflict escalate. "Everyone please, let's keep this civil," he urged, his voice cracking slightly under pressure. But his words did little to quell the storm breaching the gaps, becoming a mere whisper in the whirlwind of emotions. The sister was relentless. "You cannot just disregard humanity because of deep-rooted biases. It's not just about personal perspective, but understanding how our actions ripple through those around us. You are perpetuating a cycle that harms so many." The atmosphere grew charged, each exchanged phrase flaring into another heated rebuttal. The woman, cornered and panicking, struggled to summon the strength to retort, but instead she faltered, "I didn't mean to offend. I just thought," her voice trailed off, lacking the power it once held. The sister pressed on, undeterred. "You didn't think. That's the problem," she asserted with unwavering clarity. "You dismissed my brother based solely on his appearance. It speaks volumes about who you really are." As the tension spilled forth, some attendees began to share their stories, experiences that mirrored the confrontation in intense and painful ways. One woman recounted a time when she had been judged unfavorably by the color of her skin, while another gentleman spoke about discrimination in the workplace. This moment of vulnerability connected individuals who might have otherwise remained strangers, creating an unexpected bond forged in shared experiences of bias and resilience. Amidst the chaos, the woman became increasingly isolated, left to grapple with her diminishing circle of support. Her earlier bravado faded into the background as the space filled with voices for equality and understanding. Her world began to fray at the edges, the cascading events pulling her into a corner with nowhere to retreat. As the crowd drew closer, the sister directed her focus back to her brother. "You don't have to respond to this. Just know that you're valued, and the people in this room recognize your worth." Her voice softened, transforming the confrontation into a source of empowerment and communal support. The man held his head higher, bolstered by the solidarity surrounding him. The woman's previous accusations no longer felt heavy. They began to dissipate into the ether, overshadowed by the collective strength that filled the store. The atmosphere swirled in shades of compassion and awakening, as patrons breathed in the transformation unfolding before them. Faced with the universal yearning for respect, the woman who had instigated the confrontation now stood exposed, her defenses crumbling amid the crowd's judgment. Realizing her plight, the store manager finally stepped in again, this time with greater resolve. "It's important we not only acknowledge our mistakes but also learn from them," he articulated clearly, his voice surprisingly steady. "While everyone is entitled to their personal views, treating others with dignity is a choice we must all embrace." With each word, hope flooded the space, washing over the bitterness that had first marked the interaction. The sister stepped forward, offering a radiant smile that cut through the tension. "Let's move forward," she said, her voice lifting into a melody of unity. "This is a chance for all of us to reflect on who we are and how we want to shape our community." As the brother nodded, the response from the crowd shifted from confrontation to acceptance, reinforcing the idea that growth could arise even from the ugliest of moments. The air crackled with possibility, the gathering transforming from mere observers of an incident to participants in a larger dialogue about humanity, respect, and change. In that jewelry store, beneath the watchful gleam of sparkling gems, a space for healing and understanding was born amidst the remnants of hurtful words. It became a defining moment, one that would resonate far beyond its walls. The identities of the individuals therein would yield to greater insight and empathy moving forward. For in this convergence of lives, the capacity to learn and evolve blossomed like the jewels showcased around them. Time would surely tell how each participant would carry this experience into their lives outside the store, but for now, a deep connection had been made, unveiling the truth that everyone was deserving of respect, regardless of the armor they wore or the paths they walked. As the atmosphere in the jewelry store began to transform, the sister of the man, still reeling from the anger and hurt caused by the confrontation, made a bold proposition. "Let's have an open dialogue," she announced, her voice steady yet inviting, resonating with hope amidst the tension that had gripped the room. "We need to talk about racism and prejudice. Each of us has a story, and sharing might help us understand the weight of our words and actions." Her suggestion hung in the air, vibrant with possibilities. The murmurs that followed were a mix of surprise, agreement, and hesitance. Slowly, individuals began to nod, exchanging glances as a spark ignited within them. It was as if an invisible thread pulled everyone closer, knitting together the disparate threads of their experiences. Encouraged by the warmth of the burgeoning connection, the sister gestured for those interested to share. One by one, customers began to open up about their own encounters with prejudice. A young woman stepped forward, her voice quavering slightly yet filled with resolve. "I remember walking through a neighborhood where I grew up, and I was told to leave because I didn't belong," she recalled, her eyes misting over. "At that moment, I felt invisible, as if my worth was measured by my appearance and not my humanity." As she spoke, the crowd listened with rapt attention. It was an initiation, a key to unlocking the shared compassion that flourished in that space. The sister encouraged others, creating an environment where vulnerability was met with empathy. A middle-aged man, his voice steady but filled with emotion, expressed his realization of how often he had overlooked the struggles faced by marginalized communities. "I've been part of this issue without even knowing it," he admitted. "I've stood quietly while others were dismissed or worse. It's time I use my voice to uplift rather than silence others." With each shared story, the walls of division began to crumble, replaced by a palpable sense of understanding. The woman who had ignited this confrontation stood in the back, slowly absorbing the gravity of the moment. Each tale chipped away at her defensive posture, exposing her to the raw truths of those around her. The discomfort she felt began to transform into deep reflection, her mind racing as she considered her own actions. It dawned on her that her earlier remarks had not only inflicted pain on the brother, but had also rippled through the entire gathering, leaving an imprint on everyone present. A conflict arose within her as she wrestled with the consequences of her words. Could she truly comprehend the enormity of the impact she had caused? The mirror held up by the narratives of others illuminated her own biases, and she recognized her role in perpetuating the very ideologies she had never really thought critically about. As the dialogue continued, the sister provided gentle guidance, emphasizing the importance of active listening and the need to validate each other's experiences. "We all possess a story, and each holds its own weight," she explained. "This space is safe, where we can start to mend our understanding of one another." Her words struck a chord, inviting others to explore shared values rather than their differences. Tension shifted into an empowering force as laughter occasionally broke through the serious exchanges, creating a reassuring rhythm between gravity and levity. The atmosphere brimmed with acceptance and a shared sense of purpose. For once, the jewelry store transformed into more than just a retail space. It became a sanctuary of dialogue and healing. As the open dialogue came to a natural pause, there was a sense of anticipation hanging in the air, as if everyone had been collectively woven into a tapestry that could no longer be unraveled. They began to consider what steps they might take to turn this moment into something lasting. With fervor, the sister announced, "Let's not let this be just an isolated event. What if we organized a monthly event focused on inclusion and diversity? We can create a platform to continuously address these issues and foster understanding." The crowd erupted with enthusiasm. Ideas blossomed, and conversations cascaded around the proposal. A local artist suggested incorporating art into their gatherings, allowing expressions of identity and community to shine through visuals. Another patron offered to facilitate workshops that focused on cultural competency. Every voice mattered, and the momentum of change surged forward, fueled by the desire to create a more inclusive environment. Meanwhile, the woman who had instigated the earlier confrontation stood quietly, absorbing the energy of those around her. This was a turning point, not only for the community but for her as well. She felt an awakening within herself, a desire to contribute rather than withdraw. As her gaze shifted from the brother and sister to the growing circle of supporters, she realized she had a choice to make: either retreat into the shadows of her ignorance or step into the light of understanding and growth. A newfound determination swelled inside her. She knew that recognizing her biases was merely the first step. It was action that would ultimately impact the lives of others. With trembling confidence, she approached the sister and offered, "I want to be part of this. I want to learn and help facilitate these discussions. I know I have a long way to go, but I want to explore how I can contribute positively moving forward." The sister's eyes widened, but her expression softened, and she nodded appreciatively. "Your willingness to recognize and learn is a powerful start. Together, we can create a space where everyone feels valued and understood." Her words wrapped around the woman, inviting her into the collective journey they were embarking upon. As the conversation progressed, this shift marked a significant moment in the lives of everyone involved. The spark of hope transformed into a blazing flame, illuminating the path toward inclusivity, understanding, and change. They solidified their commitment to the new initiative, eager to turn the jewelry store into a beacon of light, a space where discussions of identity, inclusion, and diversity could be held in open, honest dialogue. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, the store prepared to host its first event. Flyers adorned the entrance, inviting community members from different walks of life, ready to embrace the spirit of change and each other. The sister, now a guiding force behind this vision, organized meetings, collaborated with local leaders, and engaged individuals eager to support the cause. With each successful gathering, the dynamic within the community evolved. Individuals formed friendships across cultural divides, built networks of support, and shared in stories that deepened their understanding of one another. The store that once served as a backdrop for prejudice transformed into a hub for bonding and thriving diversity acceptance. Ultimately, the woman found herself immersed in this newfound community, learning at every turn. Her journey toward understanding became a testament to the power of growth that emerges from confrontation, illuminating the possibility of redemption through sincerity and connection. The jewelry store stood as a living testament to the tenacity of the human spirit and the capacity for change, where every jewel now represented not just value but a promise of unity and respect. Amid the sparkling displays, the echoes of shared experiences resonated, inviting all who entered to shine their light while embracing the rich diversity that defined their community. Through these efforts, they transformed their space into more than just a retail store. It became a sanctuary of healing and a testament to the profound strength that emerges when individuals come together to collectively confront their biases and embrace the richness of human experience. As the atmosphere in the jewelry store buzzed with the energy of newfound connections, the woman who had instigated the earlier confrontation felt a deep sense of turmoil within her. Guilt washed over her like a relentless tide, and the weight of her actions pressed heavily on her chest. She had entered the store that day unaware of the profound impact her words could have, but as the stories unfolded around her, she began to grasp the enormity of her mistake. The realization struck her with a force that felt both liberating and terrifying. Determined to confront her own shortcomings, she approached the sister and the man, her heart racing. Her palms were clammy, and she hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words to convey her remorse. The sister, sensing her internal struggle, remained silent, her gaze steady and encouraging. The man stood beside her, a mixture of curiosity and caution etched on his face. The air was thick with anticipation, and the other customers, still buzzing from the earlier discussions, turned their attention to the unfolding scene. Taking a deep breath, the woman finally spoke. "I need to apologize," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I realize now how my words hurt you, and I can't express how sorry I am for the pain I caused. I've spent so long living in a bubble, not understanding the realities that others face every day. I see that now, and I want to do better." Her sincerity was palpable, and the room fell into a hush as everyone held their breath, waiting for the sister's response. The sister looked at her, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all she saw was a woman stripped of pretense, vulnerable and raw. "Thank you for saying that," she replied softly, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil swirling within her. "Acknowledging your mistakes is the first step, and it takes courage to stand here and admit that. I appreciate your honesty." The warmth in her tone invited a glimmer of hope, and the tension in the air began to dissipate. As the moment unfolded, the other customers, who had been witnesses to this exchange, began to rally around the idea of support and transformation. One woman, who had previously shared her own experiences of discrimination, stood up, her eyes shining with empathy. "We've all made mistakes," she said, her voice resonating with conviction. "What matters is how we choose to move forward." I believe we can create a community where understanding and compassion thrive. We're all here to learn from one another." Her words ignited a wave of agreement throughout the room. Others nodded, some murmuring their support, while others expressed their willingness to engage in discussions that fostered inclusivity. The woman who had confronted her prejudices felt a sense of relief wash over her as she realized she was not alone in her journey. The community was united in their desire for change, and that collective strength was palpable. The woman who had spoken up continued, "I remember how isolating it felt when I faced discrimination. It hurt deeply, and I often wished for the support of those around me. Today, we have the chance to be that support for one another. Let's embrace this opportunity to learn and grow together." With her words, she transformed the atmosphere from one of confrontation into one of solidarity, inviting everyone to join in the movement toward understanding. As the discussions continued, the woman who had initially caused the rift began to feel a shift within herself. It was no longer just about her guilt, it was about the journey ahead. She recognized that this was not a momentary lapse but a profound awakening. She wanted to invest her time and energy into combating prejudice, not just for herself but for the sake of those who had been marginalized. Emboldened by the support of the community, she stepped forward again. "I want to learn," she declared, her voice stronger now. "I want to understand the experiences of others and how my actions have perpetuated a cycle of harm. I'm willing to engage in discussions about inclusion, to participate actively, and to educate myself on these issues. I know it won't be easy, but I'm committed to this journey of self-discovery." The room erupted in applause, and the atmosphere shifted once more, this time toward the celebration of transformation. The sister smiled, her heart swelling with hope. She could see the change taking root, not just in the woman before her, but in the entire community. It was a moment of collective empowerment, a testament to the strength that emerged when individuals chose to confront their biases and embrace vulnerability. In the weeks that followed, the jewelry store became a hub of activity, buzzing with discussions and workshops focused on inclusion and diversity. The woman who had initially caused the confrontation took her commitment seriously, immersing herself in the educational resources available. She attended sessions led by community leaders, listened to stories from individuals of different backgrounds, and participated in workshops that challenged her preconceived notions. Each encounter peeled back layers of ignorance, revealing the richness of the human experience. As she engaged in these discussions, she found herself forging connections with others who had once felt isolated. They shared their stories openly, creating a tapestry of experiences that highlighted both the struggles and triumphs of their lives. The woman learned the importance of listening, of creating space for others to share their truths without judgment. She began to understand that her journey was not just about her own growth, but about fostering an environment where everyone felt valued and heard. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the store, the woman stood before a gathering of community members. She felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. "I want to thank each of you for your support," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Your willingness to engage in these discussions has changed my life. I've learned so much about the power of empathy and the importance of standing up against prejudice. Together, we are building a community where everyone can thrive, and I am proud to be a part of it." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the store and resonating in the hearts of everyone present. It was a celebration of growth, understanding, and the shared commitment to creating a better future. The woman felt tears prick at her eyes, not out of sadness but from the overwhelming joy of connection and purpose. In that moment, she realized that her journey was far from over. It was just the beginning of a lifelong commitment to learning and advocating for change. She understood that the path ahead would not always be easy, but she was no longer afraid. With the support of her community, she felt empowered to confront her biases and to stand alongside others in the fight against discrimination. As the evening drew to a close, the woman left the store with a renewed sense of purpose. The jewelry store had transformed into more than just a place of commerce. It had become a sanctuary of healing and understanding. The bonds forged within those walls would continue to grow, nurturing a community that celebrated diversity and championed inclusion. Together, they had turned a moment of confrontation into a powerful catalyst for change, proving that even the most challenging situations could lead to profound transformation when approached with sincerity, vulnerability, and a commitment to understanding one another. The day of the long-anticipated inclusion and diversity event arrived, suffusing the jewelry store with an electric atmosphere that buzzed with purpose and excitement. Colorful banners adorned the walls, each proclaiming messages of unity, equality, and the celebration of diverse identities. The store, once just a marketplace for precious items, had transformed into a vibrant bastion for social change, a space where stories were shared, voices amplified, and understanding fostered. As attendees streamed in from all walks of life, the air was thick with anticipation. The atmosphere pulsed with a kind of energy that could only be felt in gatherings committed to meaningful dialogue and collective progress. Families, friends, and individuals came together to witness the unfolding of an event that promised to reshape their community's narrative. Each person carried with them a sense of hope for a world where discrimination held no power, where acceptance reigned, and where everyone could shine in their true colors. The event kicked off with a panel discussion featuring a diverse group of speakers who had dedicated their lives to championing human rights. They spoke with unwavering passion, sharing their own experiences of struggle and resilience, weaving a tapestry of stories that highlighted both the pain of discrimination and the triumph of fighting against it. Their words reverberated throughout the crowd, igniting fires of inspiration in the hearts of those listening. Attendees leaned in, captivated by the narratives that unfolded, as they discovered the importance of empathy, advocacy, and action. In a particularly poignant moment, a young girl, perhaps no older than 10, rose to speak. With a confidence that belied her age, she shared her own journey of understanding differences and embracing her own identity as part of a marginalized community. Her voice rang clear and strong as she recounted the challenges she had faced in school and in society at large. Yet, despite the hardships, she emphasized the power of love and acceptance, urging everyone present to extend kindness to one another. "We may be different," she said, "but our hearts beat the same way. We can create a world where everyone feels safe to be themselves. We just have to choose to stand together." As her words echoed in the room, a singular silence enveloped the audience, followed by an outpouring of applause. The girl's bravery resonated with each person present, reminding them of the purity of a child's perspective, a belief that change was not only possible but essential. Her speech sparked an undeniable shift, igniting a collective resolve to champion the ideals she represented. As the day progressed, workshops were held that encouraged discussion and engagement, breaking down barriers and fostering deeper connections among participants. Attendees explored topics such as allyship, representation, and the importance of intersectionality in the fight for inclusivity. Each session was filled with rich dialogue, contributions from individuals who were eager to share their own narratives and learn from one another. Here in this intimate setting, the store became a melting pot of perspectives, where laughter, tears, and camaraderie flowed freely, nourishing a collective aspiration for growth. Among the audience was the confident young man who had stood up previously, his own journey of self-acceptance blossoming in this inclusive environment. He had transformed from a hesitant participant to an outspoken leader, inspired by the stories around him. When it was his turn to share, he stepped to the forefront of the gathering, his spirit alight with determination. "Today, I stand before you not just as a former victim of prejudice, but as a proud ally in this fight for inclusion," he declared, his voice steady and powerful. "I've learned that when we choose to speak out against injustice, we empower those around us. It's not just about sharing our stories. It's about standing up for one another and creating spaces where everyone feels valued." As he continued, his message resonated deeply with the audience. The young man spoke of connection, collaboration, and the importance of lifting each other up in times of need. His words inspired many to reflect on their own roles, encouraging them to take action in their communities, schools, and workplaces. Once silent bystanders, people felt a surge of responsibility, a call to arms that was hard to ignore. "Compassion and empathy are the antidotes to fear and hate," he continued, the fervor in his voice rising. "We must not be afraid to embrace differences or to stand against discrimination, no matter where it appears. Let us commit ourselves to be the change we wish to see, not just today but every day." His message echoed powerfully among those gathered, igniting a sense of solidarity that transcended individual experiences. The audience erupted in applause, a wave of approval surging through the space. In that collective moment, the attendees understood the depth of their shared purpose. They were no longer just passive listeners. They had become active participants in a movement committed to fostering a culture of inclusion. As the event drew to a close, attendees left the jewelry store not merely with cherished memories, but with a renewed sense of purpose. They had come together as a community united by a collective vision, a vision where acceptance prevailed, where the stories of every individual mattered, and where the strength of diversity was celebrated. The young girl, the confident man, and countless others emerged from that day transformed, their hearts and minds open to the possibilities that lay ahead. They understood that the true gems of the day were not the pieces of jewelry that adorned the shelves, but the connections forged between people. The symbols of their newfound determination shimmered not only in the store but also in the collective consciousness of their community. With each step they took away from the store, the attendees carried with them a reminder of the importance of their voices, their stories, and their commitment to fostering a world where everyone could thrive. In that moment, they were not just participants in an event, they were torchbearers of change, ready to illuminate the path forward with compassion, understanding, and an unyielding belief in the power of unity. And so the jewelry store, once simply a place of commerce, evolved into a sanctuary of hope and a beacon of inclusivity, forever marked by the voices that shared its stage and the hearts that would continue to beat for justice long after the event concluded.